my show that I am so thrilled to combine two of my passions in storytelling and tarot. I think they complement each other very nicely. The power of the images of the tarot deck to inform the stories we tell about ourselves about our own lives is kind of what gives them their power, and they make a great combination, as you'll see tonight as we go through it. I'm excited to be using the Knapp Hall Tarot deck, which is more modern than the decks I've been using on the show to up to date, but it's from 1929, so we're still not too modern, and I'm looking forward to exploring some of its imagery with you guys later. I'm really excited for our first storyteller. She's a great storyteller and a wonderful comic. The first time I heard her perform, a friend of mine that produces shows was like desperate to grab her after the show and be like, I want to book you. Like, I need to put you in my show. And so I'm so thrilled to have her here with us tonight. Please welcome Caitlin Crow.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Ryan's absolutely fantastic storyteller, and I'm very happy to be on the show. I was really very thrilled that he asked me. So basically, with the pandemic, everyone's sort of feeling it. We're all feeling a little bit down, and it really got me thinking because, like, about 3 weeks ago, I was in the grocery store and I was trying to find bread and I couldn't find it. So I had the bread idea. I was like, oh, like, let me go ahead and get some yeast and then we can make bread. And it reminded me of when I was a little girl, because when I was about 10 years old, I was living just outside of Seattle, Washington. And there was nothing more in the world that I wanted to be than a little pioneer girl. And more specifically, I wanted to be a pioneer girl on the Oregon Trail. And I knew like it was like that was a hard life, and that was exactly what I wanted. Like I played the video game, of course, but I also had read the entire Little House on the Prairie book series, all 9 books. As well as at recess, I would play Oregon Trail with my friends. And then when I would go home, I had a little bonnet and a skirt that I would put on and LARP Oregon Trail in my room with all of my stuffed animals. I think there's some technical issues. I'm getting a message. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I just thought there's some technical issues. My bad. But anyway, so I would just play Oregon Trail at home in my room with all of my stuffed animals. And so that summer, when I was 10 years old, my mom told me that I would finally be going to summer camp, which is all I wanted was to go to Sleepaway Summer Camp. And not only was I going to summer camp, but I was going to Oregon Trail Summer Camp. It was absolutely the best time in my life. Like I was like finally gonna live my dreams. Like 10 years old, my life was peaking. It was only 20 minutes away from where I lived at the time, but it was in the middle of the woods in the Cascade Mountains, and I was going to be there for 5 nights. So I get dropped off there, and they take us up to where we would be sleeping, and it's like proper covered wagons. Like there's no doors, there's nothing on that, like, or anything like that. The wagons are up on blocks, but like everything else, completely period accurate, and I am so thrilled. And when we get there, the camp counselors sort of like gather us around and they let us know that there is one rule that is most important, and that is we could have absolutely no food in the wagons because they were open air and we were in the middle of the fucking woods. So if we had food, animals would come and eat it. And I heard that and I was like, yes, this is the high stakes life or death situation that I had absolutely been craving. So we get there, get into the camp, and I don't know entirely what I was expecting out of this experience, but I think I really imagined that it would be like a perfect recreation of pioneer life. I was like, okay, like obviously we're going to be churning butter, salting meats, and just like walking, so much walking, just like miles and miles every day because that's what you did on the Oregon Trail. Well, apparently, Oregon Trail themed summer camp is just regular summer camp in covered wagons. And I was absolutely devastated. Like, and I am the only kid there who's disappointed. Like, I'm trying to rally kids, like, get them on my side. And everyone else is like, you're insane. And so I'm just sitting there and I'm just like doing all the camp activities angry, just like sitting out in a canoe, just like, oh, this isn't accurate at all. The pioneers would not be in canoes. It was too heavy. The oxen couldn't carry a canoe all the way. You had to watch your weight. And just taking it way too seriously. But as the week went on, I loosened up a little bit. I, made some friends and decided, hey, maybe summer camp isn't that bad. And going up to the last night it was just like a bunch of fun, like typical last night at camp. It was like we were just staying up late, like telling scary stories, when all of a sudden we heard a rustling in the woods. And that was like, you know what, we've been out here for a week, we know like the woods make sounds, so we ignored it. And then a little bit later we heard the rustling get closer, and that's never a good sign, because that means that you can't just tell yourself it was the wind, and that we're still like, okay, trying to ignore it. And then we hear the rustling is the closest it's ever been. And that's when we're like, no, like this is it, this is bad. Like, best case scenario is it's a serial killer coming to kill us. Like, worst case, like it's like absolutely there's some kind of animal. And so we're just convinced that we're going to die. But also we're 10 years old, so we're like, should we like go out and like investigate, like what should we do? And I'm just so scared, like I have no clue, had never been this close to death as a child before. And we wait a couple of minutes, and like just as we're about to like get the courage to go out there, one of the camp counselors comes up. And the camp counselor, has like the little flashlight and is telling us, it's like, okay, wants to check on us and lets us know that that rustling we had heard was a mountain lion. Yeah, a mountain lion had decided to come down and just go through all of the wagons and, just see if they could find anything. And luckily they had gone. But in that moment, I realized that maybe the pioneer life wasn't for me after all. And I really liked having things like doors. So after that, I closed the door on my Oregon Trail fantasies. But now with the pandemic, it is coming back a little bit, because I just sit in my house all day and bake bread, which I think is truly the more authentic pioneer experience. Thank you guys. That was it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Caitlin. I like. I I don't like that you got scared as a child, but I think that's kind of great. Like that's very like. And I was going through my cards as you were telling that story, kind of thinking of what would be inappropriate. And I for a while I thought it might be the Five of Coins, which would be interesting because that was also the card for the first story last week. To have a repeat, but as you got through it and the way it concluded, I decided what would be much more appropriate is the Page of Swords. And the swords have a lot to do with like the thinking function and the function of the mind. And so I feel like you had your vision in your mind of what Oregon Trail Camp was like, and the vision of what frontier life and the trail life would be like. And the page is also a little bit naive. In this deck, it's actually, the pages are called slaves, and they're chained to the instrument of their office. And I like that that you thought you wanted this really authentic, rugged experience, and then when push comes to shove, like there's like too much of what you asked for, and a little bit too much reality. And that I think that's firmly in the realm of the pages and of being a young person that's undergoing initiation. So a great story, and we have a good card to lead us off the night with, based on that story. And I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to our next storyteller. He's New York based, which a big silver lining for everything that's going on is we're producing these shows that are not limited by geographic boundaries. I'm thrilled to expand the community and be introduced to people who are new to me and maybe new to others of you in the LA storytelling community. I'm very excited to have, please welcome David Arroyo.
Hey folks, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to finally be able to perform in LA. So it's so awesome. So um, basically, last year my dad passed away very suddenly, sadly. And whenever somebody asks me what my dad was like, this is a quintessential story that I like to tell folks because it best describes him. So I grew up in Puerto Rico. I When I was around I'd say about 14, 13 years old, a thing that always happens in a young Latino's life, and I always see this in most Latino countries, and a lot happen. This usually happens between father and son in the Latino community, and that is getting the man talk. Now, it's not exactly the sex talk; it's more basically about being a man, being a responsible adult, basically, being strong, being a leader. And I hadn't had that talk with my dad yet at that point. All my friends had, but I was the only one who hadn't. And I pretty much figured it was because my dad didn't like me. Don't get me wrong, he loved me. He just didn't get me. Growing up, see, with this, my dad was into dancing, drinking, socializing, partying, and I was into comic books, role-playing games, and not getting laid. And so he really couldn't get a handle on who I was as a person. You know, it just didn't compute to him. So one day, I'm in my room and I'm, typing up my Star Trek fan fiction, and suddenly I hear from the other room a scream, "David!" And I jump. I immediately jump because whenever I hear that scream, I know something serious is going down, and I know it's my name. I'm in trouble. So I run to the origin of the scream, which is my parents' bedroom, and I go there. My dad is pointing to the VCR, and it's the only VCR in the house. And my mom is in the corner, and she has her hands to her face and looking down. And my dad just points to the VCR, and I could see right there, plain as day, a tape popping out of that, a videotape popping out of that. It has a title, "Busty Cops 2." And my dad's going, "What is this? What is this filth? I can't believe you're watching this. You're watching this in our bedroom? Did you know your mother saw this? You are, you are so much in trouble, young man." And he looks at me and just goes, "Okay, okay, you're grounded." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Yes. No Nintendo. No more funny books. No Quantum Leap." And I was like, "Oh my God, Dad, no!" He goes, "No. 1 month cut off." So it sucked. I had to pretty much deal with going to my dad's hardware store and working for free as free labor, and coming back home from school and doing my homework, not being able to watch TV. I was a prisoner, because if anyone who can tell you this, at least for me, when I was growing up, TV was crack, and so I was craving that fix. So anyway, it's in a month, and my family had decided we were going to move to another town, and we were all packing up, and it was my job to pack up the videotapes and organize them. So I had a really responsible job to do, but it was really kind of hard because, E.T., is it a family film? Is it a science fiction film? What is it? And so I'm packing these up, I'm organizing them, and I come across this one tape, and this tape has a star on it. And I remember growing up with this, growing up and seeing this tape, and asking my dad what is on this tape, because I'd seen all the tapes in his collection, and he had hundreds. And he goes, "Oh, this is monster movies." And I go, "Oh, well, monster movies, I don't want to see that." Because I was a wimp, like I cried when I saw Thriller. Thinking back, maybe I had a subconscious inkling of why, but whatever. So anyway, I go to myself, "Well, you know what? I'm 14. I could watch this. I'm not a baby, And I put the tape in, and I hit play, and a gigantic John Holmes cock is staring right at me, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" And immediately I'm like, motherfucker, you know what, man? I busted cops too. This is hardcore freaking porn, you know. I had softcore porn. What is this, you know? And so I take the tape and I put it in my book bag and I go and I show my friend Jose, and Jose goes, "Oh my god, dude, you know what this is? This is Taboo 1, 2, and 3. This is the godfather of porn, you know." And so he goes, "Can I borrow this? I need to make a copy." And I go, "Fine," you know. And he goes and makes a copy, and suddenly my entire grade school has copies of Taboo 1, 2, and 3. So then one day, after about a week of circulating the One Ring of Mordor, I come home and the entire living room floor is scattered with tapes, you know. And my dad is like pacing the room and looking for a tape, and he goes in and looks at me. He just says, "Hey, babe, have you seen the tape with the star? You know, the." And he's about to say monster music, and I just go, "Oh, you mean the porn?" And he looks at me, and he says, like, the color in his face just drains, and he's gone completely white. And I go, "Yeah, the porn? Is that what you're talking about? That Taboo 1 and 2 and 3? Huh?" And at that moment, my mom walks into the room, and she sees all the tapes scattered on the floor. And my mom's a neat freak, so she's freaking out. She just goes, "Tony, what is this? What is going on? What do you got? What's going on?" You know, and my dad's like, "I'm looking for a tape. I'm looking." And she goes, "Well, what tape are you looking for? I'll help you find it." And he's like, yeah." And I look at her and I just go, "I know what tape he's looking for." And he looks at me, and he knows. I own his ass. And so he's looking at me with terror in his eyes for the first time in his life. And I look at my mom and just go, "I know what tape he's looking for. He's looking for It's a Wonderful Life." And she goes, "Oh, I think I see it over there." And she goes, "Clean this shit up." And she like walks out of the room. And I take the tape out of my book bag and I hand it to my dad. And he takes the tape, and it's almost like I'm passing the torch to him. And he's looking at me with this like weird look, and I go, "Oh my god, is he gonna give me the man talk right now over this porn tape? Is this how it's gonna go down?" And he looks at me and just goes, "Thanks. I thought your uncle had this." And you know what? I never did get that man talk, but at least that day I learned how to be a better man. Thanks.
The porno tape hypocrisy. I absolutely love that. And like, you know, I wonder how much illicit material is out there hiding in VHS collections with little things like stars for symbols. That's really funny. I think there's a few different things I was drawn to in that story that I thought would associate well to tarot cards, but what I ended up choosing was the Three of Wands, and there's a couple reasons for that. But basically, there can be conflict engendered in the wands, and like I think there's a conflict of like who you are with what your dad's expectations are, but it's also kind of a card of energy very reminiscent of puberty and growth. And ultimately, I think there's progress in that story, and it ends with like the reversal of power, with the reversal of a power relationship in that moment with your mom, and that's sort of some of the movement very commonly associated with the threes. So that was a hilarious story. I'm so glad you were there to share that with us. I hope you got your quantum leap back after the fact, and we're gonna do that with the threes. And coming up next, I'm gonna share a story, and this is a story that well, we'll see. You'll see as I get into it. But this takes me back to my 18th birthday. I had been visiting friends in Reno, Nevada. Or I was flying out of Reno, Nevada. I'd been visiting friends in Lake Tahoe, And I'm not a nervous flyer. I was actually taking flight lessons at the time, so I knew how planes worked. I knew how to fly a plane. I'd been on planes a few times. Like I wasn't nervous at all. And I got on this plane, and I'm flying home to Los Angeles, and a friend of mine is having a party there that evening, and it's not really a party for me, but it's my birthday, and it's like we're gonna celebrate my birthday at this party, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm reading this book, and I'm so into this book because it's about this author, Clive Cussler, and like he's doing like what I consider to be a more sophisticated version of The Secret, where he was like super into underwater sea exploration. And basically what he did was he wrote this series of novels about underwater sea exploration, and then used that money to finance a company that recovers sunken shipwrecks. And like he goes underwater sea exploring, and he finances it by having written fiction about it. And I feel like he wrote his dream job into reality through like the power of fiction. So I'm kind of obsessed with this, and I'm just buried into this book. And I'm not a frequent flyer, but I've flown before. I'm not paying attention to the safety briefing or anything like that. And all of a sudden I'm into my book, and I feel the wheels rumble and the plane shake and move, and we're up in the air, and things are fine, and I'm into my book, and all of a sudden the atmosphere in the plane shifts. I can feel a shift in the atmosphere, and like the only way I can describe it is I went to a church service once, and I arrived a little bit late, and I came and I sat down, and I was like, my God, like what is wrong? Like something's wrong here. What is wrong? And then I recognized the feeling, and I was like, oh, it's death. Like somebody died. Like, and like no one said anything, but I could just feel like that was like what the atmosphere was like. There had been a death, and it turned out that was correct. And I didn't necessarily get the sense that it was death, but the atmosphere in the plane changed that dramatically. I was like, oh my God, like something just shifted. And I looked up, and people on the plane, people are crying, and the stewardess is telling everyone to brace into the crash position. And I've been lost in this book. I've been in the fantasy of underwater sea exploration. So like I immediately snap back to reality. And the pilot gets on the intercom, and he basically announces that the fire warning lights in the cockpit have gone off, and the plane's on fire, and we're returning to Reno to make an emergency landing. And like a lot goes through my head, and not the least of it is that I'm potentially going to die a virgin on my 18th birthday, like the day I officially became a man in a legal sense, and like this is how it's going to go down. And like it seems ironic in a way I can't quite articulate, and it seems unjust, and I feel like it's not my time. And I'm also upset that like the environment on the airplane, it's become chaotic. Like people are really distressed. People are some people are praying, some people are crying, but it's like I want silence. I want to contemplate my fate in silence. I can't believe people won't shut up in the face of what we're all facing. And we turn back to the airport, and it's a steep bank turn, and we come into land. And as the plane's landing, there are fire trucks racing along the plane next to us on the sides as we come into a land. And we touch down, and everything's okay. They do an inspection. They get back on the radio. They say that there actually wasn't a fire on the airplane, just that all the sensors and all the alarms that they have that exist to tell you whether or not there is a fire were saying there was a fire, but there wasn't. And at the time I bought that, in hindsight, I've become a little more conspiratorial and skeptical as I've aged. And now I'm like, well, that's exactly what I'd tell people if I was trying to hide the fact that the plane was on fire. But we get off the plane, and I'm newly 18. I'm officially a man, but I'm still very much a child. Like, my parents booked this plane ticket for me. Like, I don't know how planes work. And everyone else that was on that airplane immediately goes to the counter, and they're rebooking flights on different planes. They're making different arrangements. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to hang around. And they say they're gonna work on the plane for a bit, and then everyone that's booked on it is gonna refly to Los Angeles on this same plane. And I don't know any better. Like, I'm not enough of an adult yet to realize I have options. I think, well, the plane people said we're gonna get back on it, so I guess we're gonna get back on it, and that's my plan. But now I have a few hours to kill in the airport, and I want to do something to celebrate being 18. And I didn't exactly cheat death, but I felt like I might die for a second, and I didn't die, and I'm very much alive, and I want to do something to celebrate being 18. And so I'm wandering around the airport, and I go into the bookshop, and I'm looking around, and there's this book in the airport bookstore, and it's called The Gentleman's Guide to Legalized Prostitution in Nevada. And like, I don't know why, but this book has a hold on me. I just stare at this book, and I'm like, I could have died a virgin today. Like, I could get this book. I could get the information that's in it. I could visit, like, but like all these thoughts race through my mind, and I'm transfixed to my spot in the airport. And the more I think about it, the more I don't want the information that's in this book. That's not how I wanted everything to play out. That's not who I want to develop it into. And so it takes me a while, but I leave my place rooted in front of this book, but I still want to celebrate being 18. And so I notice in the bookstore they have tobacco for sale, and I'm like, well, I can legally buy tobacco. I'm an adult. But I don't have good tobacco preferences. I haven't smoked before. And so I end up buying these really terrible cigars called Backwoods. I buy a pack of Backwoods cigars, and I take them into this, they still had a designated smoking section in the airport because it was Nevada, and they basically shove you off into this glass box with ceiling vents that just suck the smoke right up, and I'm smoking these terrible cigars in this claustrophobic glass box in the airport, contemplating what it means to actually be 18 years old. And it's not a good experience, but I feel like I've done something to mark my entry into legal adulthood. And then I get back on the same plane that they told me earlier was on fire. And we leave, and we get back in the air, and this time my book holds no interest to me. This time I'm paying attention to the safety briefing. This time I'm paying attention to everything that's going on the plane. And we're going along. We're about 40 minutes out from the airport, and the masks drop down, like the emergency masks drop down, and the captain gets on to make an announcement saying we lost cabin pressure, and then he makes another announcement to announce that, it's back on. And he goes, it seems to have fixed itself. We're going to try and see if we can't make it into Los Angeles. And like, I don't know, like, I can't describe how unreassuring the words "try and see if we can make it" are in an airplane. It's like, no, you go to Los Angeles. You don't try and see if you can make it to Los Angeles. So like, I'm uncomfortable the rest of the flight, but we do make it, and we land into Los Angeles. And now I am thinking about the party I was going to that night with friends, and now I've inverted the narrative in my hand. Like, not only is this not the day I'm going to die a virgin, like this is the day I'm going to get laid for the first time. Like, I'm definitely going to get laid at this party, and I don't, but I go to the party and I have a great time, and it was very like. 18 is too young to really appreciate feeling like you've been given a new lease on life, but I did for a while. I walked taller, and the flowers smelled sweeter for a while after that. So that's my story. Thank you guys for listening, and instead of assigning a card to my own story, I'm going to pick one at random from my deck and then try to interpret it in light of what I just shared, and hopefully that'll make sense. And the card I've gotten is the Queen of Cups, and cups are very much the realm of emotions, and I like the Queen of Cups. There's a lot of there's a lot of the idea of mastering your own emotions and like knowing yourself, and I feel like that fits in the story. Not only was I able to keep my own emotions in check somewhat and not panic over the situation, but I was also in touch with my emotions, my feelings about who I really was, and that like despite the temporary attraction, like the book about legalized prostitution in Nevada, like that wasn't for me. That wasn't a road I was willing to go down. Down. So I think that's the cups, and that's the card for that. And I'm very excited to introduce our next storyteller. She's Los Angeles based, and this is my first time getting to have her on my show. I'm very excited to have her. Please welcome Alicia Marie.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. We had issue with the audio there. We're going to bring Alicia back in one moment. Let me see.
Hey, folks. Thanks for being so patient. I know we're having some technical difficulties here. So while everything gets fixed, I want to tell you guys another story, just to keep you guys your appetite whet there. So basically, this is an old story I like to tell. So when I first moved to New York City, I was very young. I was about 24 years old, and I wanted to find myself. That was my goal when I first went to New York. I was a very shy, introverted person, and I wanted to become this like really outgoing person, this like life of the party kind of guy. And it was been a year, and that had not happened. I remember I was eating Doritos, trolling OkCupid, listening to people outside my door of New Year's Eve, having a great time, laughing, dancing, and I remember just thinking to myself, okay, no, I can't take this. This is not how my life is supposed to go. I am done. I can't do this anymore. So basically, I decided to change my life. So I call my best friend Juan, and he's like the smartest guy I know. And I'm like, Juan, hi. First of all, Happy New Year. And I need to change my life, dude. Can you give me some advice to do this? And he gets very quiet on the phone, and he goes, well, David, it's a pretty big question, but what you need to do is you need to break down your life in different goals. And you're going to work on one goal, you're going to achieve that goal, and you're going to move on to your next goal. So the question here is, what is your first goal? What do you want to achieve? And I go, oh, that's easy. I want to get a girlfriend. I want to be a ladies' man, and stuff. I want to be the life of the party. And Juan gets really excited. He goes, oh my God, David, you're not going to believe this. I'm watching a TV show all about being a ladies' man. It's a reality show, and it's called The Pickup Artist. Now, if you guys don't know what The Pickup Artist is, it's basically a reality show about this loser guy who is called Mystery, and he is a pickup artist. And it's based on a book called The Pickup Artist, which basically talks about, the gentleman's life. And he has created a system on how to seduce a woman in the world. So basically, you can see, like, let's say you're in Times Square and you see a nun there, you use a system and you wind up having sex with her in the bathroom. It's amazing. So I watch the show and I get really invested in it because there's this guy who's this chubby guy, and I'm chubby and I identify with him, and his name is Frankie D. Now, Frankie D goes from being this introverted, shy guy like myself to being like the life of the party. He doesn't win the show, but he does get pretty far into it. And so I decide I'm gonna like talk to this guy. So I go on MySpace, I track him down, and basically he's basically like, talking to me. He's going like, "Oh, this is awesome, Dave. I really like you. I really identify with you. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm doing classes right now. And if you want, I'll go to New York and I'll teach you one-on-one the system." And I go, "Oh my God, Frankie, this is great. What would I have to do to get you to come over?" And he goes, "Oh, well, normally I charge $4,000 for these services, but for you, I like you, David. I'll do it for $3,000." And coincidentally, I had saved up $3,000 worth of bonuses from my really crappy sales job I was working at that time. And so I sent him the money, and he winds up flying miraculously he doesn't steal the money. He winds up flying from LA to New York, and we wind up meeting up at a Dave and Buster's in Times Square, because that's where you normally go to learn how to pick up women. And he go through the whole system. He's basically talking about how you have to watch your body language, have conversations memorized in your head so you don't go blank. So a typical pickup artist then is you turn your body to the side like this, and you go to the woman you like, and you go, "Hey, how are ya? I got a question for you. My friends and I, we have a bet, and we're trying to decide. We're having this discussion. Who lies more, men or women? Which of course doesn't work. And so he basically teaches me the system. Then he gets really serious to me, and he says, "Okay, David, this is very important. This is really important. This is the key thing that will get you laid. Listening?" And I go, "Yes." And he goes, "Okay. Magic tricks." And I go, "I'm sorry, what?" And he goes, "Magic tricks." And I go, "Magic tricks." And he goes, "Yes. What entertained them at five will amaze them now. Trust my friend, magic tricks is where it's at." And I'm like, "Okay, well, everything I've done before hasn't worked. I mean, the last date I went on before that was a girl who ended my date saying, 'You know what, David, you're just a pure nice guy,' which to this day I have no idea what it means other than I will not have sex with you." And so I say, "Hey, you know what? I'll do the magic tricks. Screw it, Oh, okay. Sorry about that, guys. I got interrupted. So anyway, we go out that night, and we go out, and I meet no women whatsoever. It's a complete disaster. But I'm excited because it's the first time ever I've gone out and I've been talking to people. I mean, it doesn't go well, but I'm out there, and I'm seeing this whole new world of people, of shadow people, dancing and talking and stuff like that. And I finally feel like I'm kind of getting into this world. And afterwards, Frankie goes and says to me, "Oh my God, Dave, you did great. You did great. Now, what you need to do, this is the key thing, what you need to do is you need to start going out 4 times a week." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Frankie, I don't know if that's going to be possible. I work here in Manhattan, and I live in the Bronx, which is about an hour, sometimes an hour and a half away commute. How am I going to be able to go out at night and stay out till 1 in the morning and get back home and then sleep and go back to work? It's going to be really tough." And he looks at me and goes, "David, what the fuck? Okay, if you want to get good at this, you're going to have to start going out 4 times a week with approaching 3 women a night." And I go, "Fine, I guess. I guess I'll do it." And so I start going out 4 times a week. I start going out 4 times a week, and it's a disaster. I'm that creepy guy at the bar going like, "Hey, how are you?" Nobody talks to me. And coming home, and worst of all, I'm coming to work like a zombie. I'm exhausted, and my sales go from being the top 4 to bottom of the barrel. And my boss one day calls me and he goes, "Hey, David, just want to talk to you. First of all, those magic tricks have alienated your entire coworkers. But other than that, your sales have been horrible. I haven't seen sales this bad, ever. And I go, yeah, I'm sorry. I'll make it up next quarter. And he goes, yeah, I'm gonna have to let you go. And in that moment, I realized that I made the biggest mistake of my life. I realized that I had to stop doing the stupid system. It was completely worthless. I had to become, somebody new. I had to become myself. And no, I'm lying. I started going out 7 nights a week, guys. 7 nights a week. Because you know what? I'm getting unemployment. I can wake up whenever I want. So I'm starting to go out every single night, every night. I'm approaching women and getting rejected, approaching women and getting rejected. And I'm talking to Frankie while this is all happening. He goes, don't worry, David, you're gonna suck at first. You're gonna be like, fail, 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 fail. But then one day you're gonna go, and you're gonna fly. And I keep thinking in my head, you hear all these stories of people going like, I tried and I tried and I tried. And one day on my lowest, I looked up and I succeeded. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm going to be that guy. And one day it's New Year's Eve again, and I'm at a rooftop bar, and I have my Fire wallet, which is basically this fake wallet where you open it up and you click a switch and flames pop up, and you close it and you say something really cool like to a girl like, hey, I'm hot, and that's supposed to work. And anyway, so the last couple of times I've used it, it wasn't really that impressive. At least I thought it wasn't, because women were not responding very well to this. And I figured I had to go bigger. So I pour like 3 times the amount of lighter fluid into it. And I'm in front of these 2 really cute girls, and they're not that interested. But I go, hey, do you need a light? And I take out my wallet and I flick it. And I didn't realize 2 things. And the first thing I didn't realize was, I'm at a rooftop bar and there's wind. And 2, I've used too much lighter fluid, because when I clicked it, it did an explosion of fire. When the wind came, blew it into my face, and it basically took out one of my eyebrows. It singed my beard at that time. So I smelt for the rest of the night like burnt hair and with one eyebrow. And I don't know about you guys, but when you burn off your face, it's a bit of a wake-up call. And so I decided this system was worthless. I had to, go out, and I had to, be myself. And you know what, guys? I never did become that pickup artist, but at least I became that pure nice guy, and I'm cool with that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for stepping into the breach with that, David. I really enjoyed that story. I thought about a couple different cards. One is the Hierophant, or the Pope, and it's about sort of a leader, but also like a spiritual initiator and guide, and sort of the importance of picking the right one. And I feel like maybe you picked the wrong person to sort of guide you into a new phase of life. But ultimately, the card I decided to pair with that is going to be a little more on the nose. And I went and, because you relied so heavily on magic, we're with the Magician. And there's a few different levels of that. And one is that you were literally using magic until it also literally blew up in your face. And I like that your boss had to mention that the magic was alienating the office. But also the idea of the Magician is sort of like putting a false face forward to the world, like trying so hard to be someone you're not, and trying to change the perception of who you are. And so I think that worked really well. And unfortunately, we had another storyteller. I don't think we're able to get the technical difficulties sorted out. So Alicia Marie was supposed to join us, and I will certainly work with her to get that straightened out afterwards, and we will have her back in the future. So you won't be hearing from her tonight, but you will be hearing from her again in the future. I'm very excited to have her be a part of this show. And now is kind of the fun, but also the stressful part for me is I'm going to take the cards from each of our stories and put them together and do a little bit of a reading. And I think it's a fun way to sort of focus on parts of our lives that are maybe being informed by the pandemic, but it's not so much pandemic related or focused. And so bringing it back to Caitlin's story with the Page of Swords, where Oregon Trail Camp wasn't Oregon Trail enough until it was too much all at once with the mountain lion. And what a frightening animal, especially as a child. And then we had David's story about the the porno tape hypocrisy from his father that precluded the man talk, but also led to a reversal of power in that moment with his mom. That was a lot of fun. And then we had my story with the plane that didn't crash and the Queen of Cups, the emotions. And then finally, we had David with another story about trying and failing to become a pickup artist. And I think you're probably a better person. I think you're winning at life by having not developed into a pickup artist. So I think that's better for everyone overall that didn't work out. And that's the Magician. So, the Page is someone who is very much developing into who they're going to become, and it's a card of sort of like the Page becomes the Knight. It's a young person that's learning to find their way in the world, and I think with everything going on in the world, that kind of collectively represents us, where especially with the Page of Swords, which has to do with the mind. Like we're all sort of learning a new way to be in the world. Like no one has mastered the art of self quarantine yet. We're all sort of learning by doing. We're being actively initiated, and that leads into the Three of Wands, and that's also a card with sort of a youthful energy, but instead of having to do with the mind, it's the realm of intuition, and we're having to the playbook for what's going on hasn't been written, so we're having to rely on our intuitive sense of what's right and wrong, and that leads into the Queen, and the Queen has mastery, and the Queen of Cups shows that if we embrace the first two cards, the Page of Swords and the Three of Wands, if we embrace sort of the youthfulness and the newness of everything that we're experiencing, that we can't control the external circumstances, but we can control our feelings and how we cope with what's going on. That despite of the world raging around us, we are somewhat in control. And then finally, the concluding card for us is the Magician, and the Magician is it didn't work for David's story, but the Magician has the ability to create his own reality and to sort of reshape the world at his will. And I think moving forward, if we embrace the newness of everything, if we can master our own self and our own emotions with the Queen of Cups, then ultimately through everything that's going on, we'll have a beautiful opportunity to create something new, to do something new in the world, and something new and magical. And so I'm very happy. I'm thrilled with our storytellers and with the stories we got, but I'm really happy with the cards that ended up relating to them all. I think it's a good read. I think it has a lot to say about the current moment, and that there are ways to exert our own personal power. We don't have to give it up necessarily to the external circumstances. And thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been Carded Tarot Tales. We're a weekly show for the time being. I hope you'll tune in again next week and join us as we further explore the relationship between the imagery of the tarot cards and their relationship to the stories we tell. Thank you so much.